Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. The champion of the 2026 American Cup has been crowned, and it is Wesley So. This is one of the most prestigious chess events in the United States, and Wesley So delivered an incredibly solid performance to claim the title in St. Louis. Throughout this whole tournament, he has faced against top players in the world, in the United States. He demonstrated the trademark style that has made him one of the most respected chess players in modern chess. Calm under pressure, having an incredibly detailed, deep preparation, and extraordinarily precise moves. On his way to the championship, he faced a lot of strong players, including Fabiano Caruana, Ray Robson, Levon Aronian, Semsevian, and he played against Levon Aronian in the grand final, which is an extremely hard opponent to play against. He is extremely strong. Both of them are strong, and anything can happen. So this victory is also like a very meaningful one for Wesley. Just 2 years ago, he participated in this exact same event, but ended up as the runner-up instead of first place. He is in second place 2 years ago. And this time he returned stronger and completed the journey all the way to the very top without too many losses and draws, but he played extremely well. With this triumph, Wesley So not only takes home the championship, the trophy, and also a significant prize, but also adds another major title to his chess career, and he has already been pretty successful in this year. And today we're going to be taking a look at one of the games that he has played, and it is the game that he played against Levon Aronian in the grand finals. This is round number 1. This game is extremely decisive. I'm not going to tell you guys the result yet, but if you guys have been following this tournament, you might already know what happened. But I was really impressed by how Wesley played in this game. He had an extremely high accuracy. And for Levon, he didn't make any huge blunders or huge mistakes, but Wesley just slowly but catched every slight inaccuracy mistake that Levon made, and then increasing his advantage step by step. So yeah, but let's jump into this game and learn that how did he win this game. Okay, I already tell you guys the result. He won, and with the white pieces. So the game started with e4, and we had the Italian game, the Giacomo piano, bishop c5, short castle, knight bd2, d5. This is all theory, basically. For black has many options here as well, like d6, a6. It's all possible for black, as long as you play moves that helps to develop your pieces. And here Levon plays d5. Pretty aggressive idea, but also pretty common. E takes d5, knight takes d5. And here Wesley played the move rook e1, attacking the e5 pawn. But basically here both sides, as you can see, the time management, they are not spending any time. And on the other hand, they are gaining extra time on the clock. So this whole event, the time control is both sides having 90 minutes and a 30-second increment. So if you play a move, you gain 30 seconds. So actually it is a pretty long time control, but usually in those high-level events, and also I have participated in many events, it's all this time control. So you can play on for 5 hours or even longer. But that is not the most important thing here. I'm just sharing some unimportant details with you guys. Rook e1, knight b6 back. So here, it is important that you can't really take on e5 because this is like a poisoned pawn. Black has a trick here. If you take on e5, well, for black doesn't really take back because after takes, here you don't really have enough compensation. You're just simply down a pawn. And also bishop f2 here unfortunately doesn't work because after king takes f2, now queen f6 doesn't work because the knight blocks this check and also defends the rook at the same time. And if you give a check on d4, the rook can just simply drop back to e3, and with that, white is completely winning. So the point is that for knight takes e5, black does not take on e5, but plays this really nice idea of going bishop f2 first, and the king obviously has to take, and then queen d4 check. So now if you play rook e3, you're going to lose, because after knight e5, white's king is like in the middle of nowhere, and then knight g4 is coming, black is completely winning. But if you don't play rook e3, you have to play king f1 or something. But after knight e5, still, due to the fact that white's king is so weak and open to all of these files and diagonals, black is the side who is having the advantage here. So that is a little trick here that black has, and obviously Wesley knows that he should not take on e5 because it's a poisonous pawn, and instead he played this move, bishop b3 back. A prophylactic move, or just simply, retreating the bishop back because you don't want to give up the bishop pair so early. And yeah, bishop b3 back. Maybe this knight could go to c4 at some point, and also there are a4, a5 ideas that are possible. Bishop g4 here was played, pinning this knight, which is quite annoying. So here Wesley plays h3, bishop h5 back, and here this move, knight e4. So right now this is all still pretty normal in the opening stage, and here the knight is attacking the bishop, and here the bishop goes back to e7. It is also important for black to not allow white to gain the bishop pair too early, because bishop pair is like an element in chess which is really important. Usually in a lot of positions, if you have the bishop pair, then you are the side who is better. But it of course depends on what type of position that is. And for example, in this type of position where the diagonals and everything are quite open up, and it is a pretty, the pawn structure are quite balanced or quite the same. In this type of position, you usually just want to keep your bishop pairs on the board and try to get rid of black's bishop pair. Get rid of one of the bishops that your opponent has. So here Wesley plays knight g3, attacking this bishop. And now you might say, well, I'm just going to keep my bishop pair and play bishop g6. But, just in general, you want to keep the bishop pair. But here, obviously you cannot do it because after takes, you just lose a pawn. So sometimes it is forced to give up the bishop pair, but obviously you do have compensation. It doesn't mean that if you doesn't have the two bishops on the board, then you're just going to lose. It's not like that. It's just like kind of element or kind of rule that sometimes could be helpful to you. So here, obviously the bishop cannot go back to g6 anymore because you lose the pawn on e5. And here Levon takes on f3 because he has to. And after queen takes f3, still this pawn on e5 is being pressured. And here Levon plays the move a5, which is a very common idea, not only in the Italian game, but also in a lot of openings like the Rule Lopez, where here, when your opponent has a piece on b3 or b6 square, normally you want to, especially if it's a knight, normally you just want to push your a pawn and kick it away, because it's not that easy for your opponent to do anything except pushing the same a pawn to prevent your pawn from pushing. But here it's actually not needed. White, if you go a4, it is okay, but you do weaken these dark squares and could be a little bit annoying. Whereas at the same time, even though black has already pushed a5 and weakened the b5 square, but you note that this square, it's hard for white to really use it. He can't really get the knight to the b5 square or the light square bishop. So a4 here doesn't really do anything, but here Wesley plays this more flexible move, c3, which makes a lot of sense. And here black plays a4, the follow-up idea of a5 to kick this bishop, but the bishop just calmly retreats back to c2. And this type of setup happens a lot also in Rule Lopez, where the bishops are here on these two diagonals and putting a lot of pressure on black's kingside pawns. So here after bishop c2, now you realize that this bishop pair is actually really strong and powerful. Well, really powerful, because there could be tactics happening at the right moment. So here Levon plays the move king h8, probably doesn't really want to allow any bishop h7 ideas, or any checks that might be available for the white pieces. And also maybe in the future to push the f5 pawn. The king just looks much safer on h8 compared to on g8. So this is a very useful move. And here Wesley plays knight f5, jumping in to this very annoying square for the black pieces, and also attacking, putting pressure on the g7 pawn, and maybe at sometimes wanting to take on e7. So it's not that easy for black to deal with this knight. And here, because that this knight is so annoying on f5, Levon unfortunately made a mistake at this point. He moved his bishop, and actually here there are two options that look logical: bishop f6 and bishop g5. And here, this is when the bishop pair rule comes into use. You know that you just realize that in this position, if you're with the black pieces, you realize that white is better due to the fact that he has the bishop pair. And these two bishops are so strong. This light square bishop could be activated by d4, and it's so scary. So for black, the most obvious and natural move is actually to go bishop g5 to offer a trade of bishops. And now if white were trade, then after queen takes g5, in my opinion, black is now completely fine, because with only one light square bishop, it's not enough for white to really launch a deadly attack on the king side. Maybe you could go h4, but after queen f6, let's say you keep on pushing, there's ideas of going g6, and I think this position is quite equal. So after knight f5 here, bishop g5 should have been the move played, but instead of bishop g5 here, Levon played the other move, which looked also quite normal, the move bishop f6, but this is a mistake. Now, I could understand that the bishop on f6 looks really useful. It defends the g7 pawn, it supports both of these pawns, but at the very same time, it's like a pawn itself. The pawn, the bishop on f6, right now it is being blocked by its own pawns, not really doing anything besides defending. If you replace it with another black pawn, I think it would make it's the same idea. But I think maybe Levon's idea is also to go g6 and trying to fianchetto his bishop in this way. But it wastes a lot of moves, and in the game, he never really did get his bishop to g7. So here after bishop f6 here, d4 was played. This is the idea that I've mentioned to activate the bishop on c2. Even though it's a sacrifice, but after the move g6, actually for black, if black were to take on d4, it doesn't really help much. And here, instead of taking back on d4, because after takes, this is no good for white, this is nothing too exciting for the white pieces, because the more pieces you trade, the less counterattack or counterplay that you get on attacking your opponent's king. So here, instead of taking back on d4, white can actually have this really beautiful tactic here. Knight takes g7. And now if black were to take on g7, unfortunately there's this check. King has to go back. But now, you play queen f5, threaten checkmate on h7, and black will have to play something like d3 and to give up the queen to, try to survive. But of course, it is impossible for black to survive without a queen. So here, after takes, the other option is to take back with the bishop, but again, there's queen f5, and here, if you play queen h4, the only way to defend, now there are ideas of going g3. Now, this position, black can still try to challenge white, playing moves of rook a5, but actually just after takes and g takes h4, white is up material and should be winning. Maybe there's d takes c3, but you play rook b1, and I think white still should be winning, although has to play a little bit more moves compared to black taking on g7 with a king. But now, instead of taking on d4, e takes d4, it wasn't played in the game by Aronian, and instead he played this idea of g6, with the idea of fianchettoing his bishop g7, but it never really happened. Instead, bishop h6 here was played, and suddenly you just realize that g6 weakens these dark squares, and black is just simply not in time to get his bishop back. In the game, he played rook g8, maybe at some point bishop g7, and also, Black can't really take on f5 because the queen takes back, and checkmate on h7 is unavoidable. Knight g3 here was played, however, which is a very, accurate move. Here, if you take, or play something like rook a d1, it is fine, but you do have to be careful of ideas of going e4. And again, black can't really take because of queen takes f5. Oh, actually, queen takes f5, there's this move e4. And queen takes e4, there's rook g6. Oh, this is black's idea of defending by sacrificing a pawn and then playing rook g6. Now, black can't really play rook g6 immediately because of d takes e5. But black can play e4 first and then rook g6. So this is something that Wesley So has to be careful about. And in the game, he played knight g3. Because here, actually, black, instead of taking on f5, could also play e4 immediately. And after takes, again, with this idea of going rook g6. So this is, I think, the reason why he didn't really play anything else like rook d1, but retreats this knight back calmly to g3, and now there's no longer any e4 ideas. And here Aronian plays e takes d4, desperately trying to find counterplay, but after takes, he simply just opens up more files and diagonals for white to attack. So here knight e4 was played, again a beautiful attacking idea by Wesley, bishop h4, and as you can see, this bishop unfortunately cannot really go to g7. Now the point is that here white has knight g5 and knight f7 is coming unstoppable, and black can simply resign. So here after knight e4, bishop h4 was played, but this bishop is just horrible on h4. Rook a d1. Now this is the idea that I've just mentioned, but you do need to be careful about some e4 ideas in the previous variations that I have mentioned. Here there's e4, but now after rook a d1, there's no longer e4 because black has already played e takes d4. So this is a big difference. And here f5 was played. But simply this just weakens more squares in black's territory. And here knight c5 was played. This is just simply a disastrous position for black. And after rook e8, trying to trade some pieces, well, unfortunately, there's knight b7, queen f6, and g3. This bishop is trapped. g5 was played, trying to attack or trap the bishop on h6 as well. But here, queen h5 was played. A very nice idea by Wesley. He can't really take on h4 because after queen h6, black will be able to hold this. Well, having more chances to hold this, but still white is better. Here, queen h5, again, a really calm move, really basic idea. Defend this bishop on h6 and also at the same time threatening rook e8. And here Aronian plays rook g8, g takes h4, g takes h4, king goes to safety, rook g6. But simply this bishop, bishop f5 was played. But I think this is not really hard because it is also okay for you to retreat this bishop back. I think anything here works, but bishop f5 is just a more beautiful way to decorate this whole winning plan by Wesley. And bishop f5, the point is that here black takes on h6, but now there's this move, rook e8 check, and black has to take back, queen e8, king g7, give this check on g1. I think this is not a too difficult tactic. Rook g6, all forced, bishop takes g6, h takes g6, this knight gets back, threatens knight e6, and after knight e7, rook e1, knight d5, and knight e6 check, king goes to h7, and then the game went on for a couple of more moves, but simply black can't really give any available checks, there's no perpetual checks, and after knight e6, queen f2, if you play queen f3 here, unfortunately, after king g1, you just run out of checks, and then it will be white's turn to give this annoying checks and win a couple of moves later. So here after queen f2, looks a little bit scary, but for Wesley, he knows what to do. He plays knight g5, king goes up, rook g1, no checks, knight e6, king h7, and knight f8, king g7 here. The final move, knight g6. And after this move, Levon resigned due to the fact that, if you play queen f3 check, there's unfortunately king h2. If you give another check, there's rook g2, and you run out of checks. If you give a check on e2, again, there's rook g2, and you might have to give up your queen for this, but you definitely lose without the queen. This is, how to say, I was really impressed, as I've said, by Wesley's play. He didn't really make any huge mistakes. The opening was fine, but I was mostly impressed by how he wins this game, especially those tactics, and he used this bishop pair. Well, Levon only made a little bit obvious mistake by playing bishop f6, and then Wesley, he correctly played out each move against this mistake, and all of these moves, queen h5 ideas here, like queen h5, and then bishop f5 coming. He just wins this very cleanly, and he knows what he's doing. He has all of these ideas in his mind clearly, and played out every move confidently. So yeah, I sure can learn a lot of things from this game. Hope you guys also learned some things from this game as well. So yeah, this is the very first game of the grand finals, and in the second game of the grand final, he drew that game, which meant that he is the champion of the 2026 American Cup. This is a really major title. So yeah, congratulations to Wesley So, and I think this is one of the games that helped him win this whole title, and he clearly deserved it. So yeah, right now, hope you guys enjoyed my recap of this game, as well as hope you guys enjoyed this whole video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!